Okay, I'm holding. You can tell when someone's is a mom of 3. She's like, just hold this, get over here, help mom, and always change your password. There you go. All right. Welcome to the stage, Amanda Berlin. She is a senior security analyst for a consulting firm in Southern Michigan. She is, as we mentioned, a best-selling author at ShowMeCon. The best-selling author at ShowMeCon this year. She did write this with Lee Brotherston. She's co-host of Breaking Down Security and writes for several blogs. Like a lot of us, she's dealt with quite a few different regulations, is an expert of all, a friend of none. With her is David. Do you really like a regulation? See, I was telling the truth. With her is David Cybuck. He's excited to bring application security into the CI/CD, supporting fellow professionals with coaching and positivity. He is the yin to Amanda's yang there. And he's even trying to relearn how to code in C+. You're a sick man. He is a husband and a father of 3, and in his free time, he plays a level 11 paladin. Wow, even a good guy there. For the past 6 years, he's been committed to applying a background in development, risk assessment, pen testing, auditing, monitoring, and a little DFIR to boot. Please give a big hand for Amanda and Dave.
Hello.
I can figure out how to work this.
You try turning it off and turning it back on again.
I'm busy. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, you can help her get
Oh,
set
there
up.
you go. I got it.
I actually forgot one announcement. Make sure if you won an award, an award. You're the only award winner here. If you want a prize, it's going to be on the website. Make sure to get it before the end of break after this talk.
Aha.
All right, where are our notes?
I don't know.
Go find the notes.
They're over there. I don't know. Talk about something while I'm trying to figure this out.
All right, we'll figure it out. Okay, so we have a presentation for y'all that it's called You'll Understand When You're Older, right? We'll get the presentation going on in a minute. And I just want to mention a big thank you to the conference organizers, right? This is not a technical presentation per se, right? It's a message. It's going to be some advice, some tools, things that you can use to make all of these other things more useful, right? We've heard talks from people all throughout the last couple days on how to do things, right? And what we want to do is we want to help you take that and make it effective. One of the things we'll talk about, maybe you've experienced it too, is have you ever been in a situation where you needed to get budget for something, right? And you go and you have to have a conversation with a person to make that thing happen. We'll spend a little bit of time talking about connecting and communicating, all right? And so we'd like to think that this is a very important topic for every single person in the room, because for us to win, right, at the thing, whether we're fighting bad guys or whatever it is you're trying to be successful at, you need to understand what it is about that and those lessons learned. Now, the thing about it is, and I think where we'll focus and you'll start to see as we talk, a lot of these things are solved problems. So why is it that we have so much trouble solving those problems? All right, so now that we have the presentation up and some notes, and we got the thank you out of the way, which I knew was on the first slide, so...
Good thing we kind of practiced.
Yeah, there's a little bit of practice.
So first off, we're going to start with a little bit of an English lesson. I swear I haven't been drinking. So we wanted to be precise in our wording here, especially if it has to do with communication. And the thought is, like, when you're young and, you are just beginning to learn how to speak and all that kind of stuff, you go through all these growing pains when it comes to the language you've learned. Maybe you're learning another language. It all goes through these growing pains, as well as language itself does. So English itself is a very young language when you compare it to other languages that are out there. And a good example that we have is the ampersand. So the ampersand was actually part of the alphabet. So, like when you say your ABCs, it's W, X, Y, and Z. That and was actually a letter, and it was at the end of, after Z. It was and per se and, which actually meant in and of itself. Eventually, they just shortened it to and per se and ampersand, right? And then that really we didn't think of it as part of the alphabet anymore. So, and because of its placement, that's how it gets its name. And throughout life, you'll pick up certain phrases, and those will be different depending on where you live, how old you are, what social class you grew up in, and you probably have your own set of phrases and parts of your language, whether it's English or not, that you've grown up with that might be different from the person sitting next to you. So those phrases can be broken up into a bunch of different delineations, and we're going to cover 5 of those today.
Yep. And if I can interject for a second. Right, so the ampersand, just like the English language, is changing. And we're going to talk about adages, idioms, proverbs, truisms, and cliches. So what we tell you today might be different tomorrow, and we did our best to actually nail what is really a truism and what is really an adage. But just like the English language, it's different yesterday than it was today.
Because all those kids are always coming up with horrible other phrases that they use.
But actually, that's a cliche. Yeah. So, all right, go ahead.
All right. So first we have an adage. They are also called aphorisms. It's a pithy observation that contains a truth, and it's gained credence through long use. So example is, where there's smoke, there's fire. A penny saved is a penny earned. Eat to live, not live to eat. Little strokes fell great oaks. It's a whole bunch of them here. There are versions of this particular adage, where there's smoke, there's fire, that's taken many forms throughout the years. There's a Latin phrase dating back to, 43 BC. When a fire is made, will smoke be lacking? And we can kind of see a little bit of where this comes into play in InfoSec, right? If you do NADFIR or SOC work, even if you're a pen tester, you want to try and make it so there isn't smoke where there's fire.
Yeah. So if you had a junior, right? You're a digital forensics person, right? And you want to send them a quick message and teach them something. You could literally say, they come to you and say, okay, what should I do with this box? You could say, well, where there's smoke, there's fire, right? And you say something that really doesn't, it's not on fire, it's not burning. But it's one way where you can take messages you've learned and pass it on. You're going to see more of that in some of these phrases.
So next is an idiom. An idiom is an expression that's peculiar to itself grammatically or cannot be understood from the individual meaning of the words itself. A lot of these are language specific. It's the same thing whether you're explaining these to children or explaining these to somebody that isn't a native speaker. A lot of these don't translate well into other languages, and we'll cover that a little bit later as well. So example of this is, it's a cold day in hell. Others are like, there's a chip on your shoulder, meaning that you're holding a grudge, sick as a dog, jump the gun, that kind of stuff. And if anybody ever works with other languages, you know that a lot of the stuff it just doesn't map and translate one-to-one, and when it does, it makes absolutely no sense. Next up is a proverb. It's a simple and short saying, widely known. A lot of them are metaphorical, which it expresses a basic truth or principle. A lot of these are based on common sense or cultural experience. In this one, it's honesty is the best policy, or as we know, no prod changes on Friday. or it's not the firewall. So, other examples are don't bite the hand that feeds you, a watch pot never boils, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. Next up is a truism. It's a saying. Truism can apply to a lot of the things that we've already covered. It's a statement that's obviously true and tells you nothing unique, when you're saying, or interesting when you're saying it. Example, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. The apple never falls from the tree. Not sure why a lot of these have the fiery hell theme, but we just decided to go with it. A house divided against itself cannot stand. April showers bring May flowers. A lot of it isn't, not that you've not heard of any of these before, but it's just common things that we've heard growing up.
I just thought of one.
What?
All right, and since we're going with the fiery hell theme, right, and dumpster fire, right? What's the expression? Not everyone has a prod environment, but everyone has a test environment.
Yes.
Or is that
good fiery hell
a truism or is that an idiom? It's a dumpster fire waiting to happen, is what it is.
And next, the one that we all love is cliches. It's a phrase or opinion that's overused, way overused, and betrays a lack of original thought. So a good speechwriter, a good writer, a good speaker, anybody should not be using cliches. Someone's in sales when they're using a lot of cliches. Thinking outside the box, win-win situation, giving 110%, low-hanging fruit, which I'm guilty of using. Hit the ground running. But these are the original buzzwords, right? But why do we hate these? So considering their very definition, buzzwords are kind of like the swear words of the business world, and of your professional conversations that you're having. It's like grating your nails across the chalkboard when somebody uses too many buzzwords in a conversation. I would rather someone just drop an F-bomb in a professional conversation than use any of the things that I just mentioned. But when you hear a swear word, it makes you feel something, right? When you hear a buzzword, it makes you feel something, whether it's irritation, or if it's the first time you've heard a buzzword, maybe it gives you a different feeling. At one point, it was somebody that thought of the phrase thinking outside the box. And at that point, they were probably like, oh my God, mind blown. This is a great way to explain original thought. I'm going to use this all the time. And then everybody started using it all the time. And that's when it becomes a cliche. And it's better to use more precise wording. Nobody's going to trust you as an authentic source, authoritative source, if you're just regurgitating buzzwords that people have used for years, like cyber or, all that kind of stuff that just grates on our nerves because we hear it as professionals in our field 20 times a day. You want to cover anything else on buzzword now? Oh, we do have another slide on it. So this is the warning slide. There's a lot of power in the things that you'll understand when you're older, but you have to be careful. So how do you apply these adages and idioms over time gives you the opportunity to absolutely ruin it for somebody, or it gives you the opportunity to really help somebody connect the dots. But nothing says, nobody gives a crap about what you're thinking for using, if you're using cliches all the time. Well, letlet's see here. What else do we have to cover?
There is something I had just thought about too, right? So, right, you've been in these situations too before, right? Like flip it around, someone else is throwing buzzwords at you, right? Nothing tells you faster than this person is mailing it in, right? They didn't do any homework. They didn't bother to be creative in their solution, right? Then when they start throwing buzzwords at you, right? We've been there, we can know it and we recognize it. But for some reason, when we turn that around and we start talking to other people and say, we want to explain to someone the specifications we need for the thing, but we haven't done the homework.
Right, dropped a logic bomb.
Yeah, right.
Through the trapdoor. I used a password sniffer.
Yeah, right. You just start throwing words at people and then you expect them to get it? Like, why was it when you were using the buzzwords, like, oh, right, that's how I'm going to get this point across fast. Right? Does that make sense? Right. So, keep that in mind. Be careful. We're going to talk about phrases, idioms, and other examples that you can use with people. But be careful about buzzwords and think about how you feel when other people use them. Oh, okay. So when we have, there are several areas that bring out the differences in our phrasing. Right? One major hurdle to this can be cultural barriers. Right? So anyone here who has English as a second language or English as a third language even, right? People speak multiple languages. Okay. So there are times...
We don't, but...
No, and you're going to learn painfully soon because I looked up some other phrases and expressions, including some French ones, and I'm going to try to say them. But by talking to people, even if you have that as a second language, you might speak English really well. I'm sure there have been times in the past where you hear something from someone and it just doesn't make sense. Yeah, right. So I spoke with some people who speak...
Every day.
Yeah. Right.
Every day.
We're trying to do better. But the idioms, I'm sure, are even worse, right? Talking with some Spanish-speaking people, they now know what it means, but the first time they hear it, it's really strange to hear the expression, hey, just give me a second, right? How do you do that? So it drives the person who speaks Spanish nuts because they don't really understand it. It would make more sense to translate it into, if you were to say, let me a second, right? They would understand that, and if you take the Spanish meaning and convert it into English, that's what you would say. So, German, Polish, Swedish, French speakers in the room.
We apologize.
I've looked up some other expressions with people in different languages, and if you have any of these languages as your home language, you could feel free to speak up. And I am very sorry about what I'm about to do to your beautiful language. All right, so here we go. Tomaten auf den Augen haben. All right, any German speakers? Tomaten auf den Augen haben. Right? So something you would say to someone who is just blind to reality, right? When they see things that are just not there. Yes, it's German.
It wasn't French.
No, it was German. Right? So when people who just see, Germans have an expression to cover that person who just ignores reality. Right? So if you've ever been in a conversation and you've seen the triangle, you're in business, you must know what the triangle is. I only have so much time, I only have so much money, and you want so much quality, and I can't give you all three, but yet they demand it. Right? So now you have a phrase to tell them, and you have a way to tell them you have tomatoes in your eyes. And if they're German, they'll totally get what you mean, right? So, this one is one of my favorites. Det föll mellan stolarna. Anybody here speak Swedish? Det föll mellan stolarna. Alright, so, this must come from IT, because this happens all the time. It's Swedish, and it must come from Swedish IT people. This is the expression they use when you have two people who wanted to do one thing. Right? I thought you were going to do it. You thought I was going to do it, and no one did it. Stolarna. That's their expression for it fell between two chairs. So that's one of my favorites, and it has a lot of applications to IT. Sauter du coq à l'âne. Yeah, sauter du coq à l'âne. So this is a French. It's like the conversation with the vendor where they're just saying different things and they're bouncing around, or maybe there's a little bit of sales speak, and it comes from it's a way to describe a person who jumps back and forth in a conversation with no real reason or meaning, right? So I think the actual literal translation would be the jump between the cock and the donkey, right? So, yes, jumping right back and forth. You got it. All right, sauter la carotte sont cuites. La carotte sont cuites. Yes, thank you. It's like when they tell you that your AppSec pen test is against the test app. But they forget to tell you that it's the prod database behind it, right? So, your carrots are cooked, right? Why worry though, right? It's done. It's over. Everything's done.
It's like not crying over spilt milk.
Yeah, it's like our expression, not crying over spilled milk, with a French twist that says, we're fucked. Yeah, again, the thumbs up. All right, so, Quit kul na glav vitishi, which is my attempt at Russian. Anybody? That was awful. But I like the expression, so I put it in anyway, even though I don't know how to pronounce it. Right? So this person, it doesn't matter how many examples or facts you throw at them, they are never going to change their mind. Right? You could literally sharpen an axe on their head. So that's the little translation of the Russian.
I know a lot of people like that.
Vishun viz garnasht. Any Polish in here?
I thought you were Polish.
Yeah, well, I didn't grow up speaking in the house, though. So that's the Polish way of saying get your shit together. Like everything is blowing up at once. Your system is purple screening, your phone battery has died, your boss drops that rag about blockchain on your desk with a post-it that says, we have this already, right? Right? So everything is going wrong. So this is their expression, a way to say, take a breath. Okay, get a grip. Get your shit together. And I think this is something you'd say more to yourself than you'd say to someone else. So, then there's a couple other that maybe have trouble going from English back over. High as a kite. You got a chip on your shoulder. Chip on your shoulder means that you're holding a grudge against someone. High as a kite means you're drunk or on drugs. Right? Sick as a dog means you're very ill. Jump the gun means, would mean to be doing something early. Alright, so, help me out with the, yeah, it's an Apple thing, right? So, so there are more differences in the languages. One of the things are, how old we are. Right, so these are differences in age or generation. Why do we hang up the phone? Right? Why do we roll down the window? If I'm driving down the road with my car and I hear my kid roll the window down, I'll tell him roll it back up. Like, how is it possible?
There's no rolling involved.
There's no rolling involved. How is it possible he knows what I mean? Right? So if you think about some of these expressions, right there is something that tells you how powerful they are. Right? We don't rewind anymore. Right? If I go to my 10,
Be kind, rewind.
Yeah, if I go to my 10-year-old and say, hey, rewind that clip, he still knows what I mean. He's never rewound anything ever. And what is a clip? Right? Those are things that don't exist anymore. Things are expressions that have been lost to the generations. But there's something powerful in that even no matter what's going on, I can still get that message across, even though we're different. Oh, yeah, all right, thank you. All right, so this is actually an interesting one too. It's about social and economic status, right? Rural, urban, poor, and rich. There are actually differences in the way we would need to communicate with people depending on their backgrounds. We talked to a school psychologist, right, and did a little research about how this affects language and how she works with kids. And also, so the biggest thing is not so much the vocabulary, but it's the metering, right? It's the pacing of the words with the grammar. And in poor areas, it's likely that person has not grown up with complete sentences. Right? So if you go to that person, you start using complete sentences, you won't be connecting. Right? And if you read Dr. Ruby's Payne, she wrote a book called A Framework for Understanding Poverty. She explains that most schools and businesses operate from middle-class norms, what she calls the hidden rules of the middle class. Right? So an individual brings to them any conversation the hidden rules from their class. How they were raised, how they learned, comes to play in the conversation. Right, and if you think about it, how often you're talked to matters. Right, so it's really common in a poor home for that child to not hear a lot of conversation. Right, if you can think about that situation, maybe it doesn't apply to you, but if you can imagine what it would be like to go to kindergarten and only know a few thousand words. If you grew up in a poor home, there's a chance when you show up at your first primary school, you only know about 6,000 words. Compare that to a professional family. Right? A professional family, by the time that kid gets to kindergarten, has heard millions of words. Right? In my notes here, I have 6,000 for the poor kid, 6 million for the person who grew up in a family where everyone talked to each other. They learned that many more words. Those are almost pretty good example numbers. It's that degree of difference. So knowing who you're talking to can impact how well you can communicate and connect with them. Right? So, so for example, if someone was educated, right, this is again talking to our school psychologist, right, she could say to the parents, she could say, I gave your child an intelligence test. But someone without background in education, you might say something like, we gave a test to see how they think and to figure out how their brain works and how quickly they learn. In other words, when they're talking to the parents of these children, they have to remember that and present the information differently. So she said this, she said, I would avoid the word smart. Right? Because in that conversation, a person who's educated, they get it. When you say to that person, your child is smart, we measured how smart they are, they can understand it. But if you talk to a person that doesn't have a strong background or a lot of education, that would almost be insulting and then they wouldn't get it. Like, one of the things she would struggle with is saying, look, your child can't read, but is of normal intelligence. Right? That person just wouldn't get it. So she has to take that into consideration when she's having that conversation with people. So I found myself falling into this trap too, right? We've all found ourselves, but instead of talking to people, sometimes we talk over them, right? Or worse.
And I think a lot of times the idioms and truisms and stuff that we do use, it's not a difference. It crosses the boundary between classes as well, because you can say pinching pennies, and yes, if you grew up as a trust fund kid, you still know what pinching pennies means, right? It may mean something completely different to the other person, but you know as a general concept what that means. Just like bringing home the bacon, like who's raised pigs? Am I the only one that's raised pigs here? All right. So yeah,
Are there pigs in ice cream?
you know, you know what bringing home the bacon means, no matter what your class is.
Yeah. All right. Okay, so there are a lot of people that communicate on different levels, right? Some people vomit words out into the conversation, into the meeting room. Some people vomit words out into the audience.
Like David's doing now.
But maybe they use cliches, or maybe they're just excellent at getting as many words to the point as possible without solving anything, right? We know the type. Sometimes I feel like the presentations I give are a little bit like that, but people keep coming back and listening.
Or you're just stuck here until the party, which is fine too.
So you can say the words, or you can add them in a conversation, and you'd be better at communicating, right? But what do all the phrases that have stuck with us throughout the years have in common, right? So let's talk about connecting, right? Something like, can I help you, right? It's not an idiom per se, but it has a way of connecting people, right? It's not going to make you a better communicator, but it will connect you with people. So think about this. So what's the difference between walking into Smashburger and having the person behind the counter say, can I help you? Right? You know what they mean, right? You're talking to each other. You're going to give them their order and you're going to get a burger, right? But what about when you've lost somebody? Like, what about when someone you care about is gone, right? And another human being, maybe a friend, maybe not, puts their arm around you and says, can I help you? Right? You know they really care. And what's the difference? The difference is they're making a connection, right? They care about you and you feel it and you know it, right? And that matters for us when we're trying to communicate with people. Connecting with people and using an expression like that, right? It changes everything, right? This is one of my favorite expressions when it comes to talking about idioms and phrases is it changes words into a spell, right? Which reminds me, right? I have a 5-year-old boy, and because he has older brothers, he knows who Harry Potter is. Anybody else here ever seen a Harry Potter movie? Right,
it better be all of you.
Everybody familiar? So I'm talking with my son, and I want him to do something, and he won't listen. And he's getting angrier and angrier because I'm getting angrier and angrier. And he'll turn to me and he'll go, Avada Kedavra. Right? And I know what that means. And he just did that to me, and he's so adorable, I can't get angry. But in conversation, does anyone here know what the Cruciatus curse is for a conversation in IT? Anybody have a guess? Cruciatus curse is the torture curse from the Harry Potter world.
What tortures you in conversation?
Okay, if you want...
Wick knows this one. We were just talking about it.
Yeah, if you want to torture someone in a conversation, you cast this spell on them. You say the word actually. Right? I mean, okay, if you get nothing else from this conversation other than some good idioms, take this away. When you use the word actually, you are not convincing the person that you are read, that you are smart, and that you really know what you are talking about. You are torturing them. Find a new way to get that point across. One of the better things we'll talk about here is getting on common ground, right? So getting on common ground with that person, ask them some questions. They are saying something completely wrong and it really hurts you to let that go. Just pose it in the form of a question back to them. Something like, when I read about that, I heard it a little differently. Where did you read that? Or just find a way to stop using the Cruciatus curse with people in our conversations, please. All right, so people in sales know how to connect, right? The good ones anyway. Sales 101 is to focus on the features, right? A feature is a fact, a benefit that will, instead of focusing on the features, you want them to focus on the benefits to people, the things that will help, right? People are bombarded with information daily about features and they tune it out. The same thing goes for us when we have conversations with people, right? Assuming there are social engineers in the room, right? You know this, right? If you want to get connected with people and get on common ground, the first thing you have to do is listen, right? If you're a social engineer, you just want to let the other person talk, right? You'll ask them questions and exchange information. Maybe you talk about something you like, they talk about something they like, and you're starting to get connected. So first part about connecting is actually listening, right? So one of the most common ways to connect with people, right? I was just mentioning that, right? Ask questions. Get on common ground with them, right? So another part about communicating and connecting, anybody actually, what's that?
I just cracked my back, that's right.
Oh, okay. Don't fall over. Anybody, who else flew here? Anybody else fly here? Sit in a plane? Anybody in the middle seat? Anybody in the middle seat? Come on. The middle seat is actually a way where you can communicate and connect with two people at the same time. No, middle seat sucks.
It's torture.
It is torture. It's torture. So there was this story from a leadership speaker, not necessarily in IT. He tells this story about a woman she's flying and she's got some time before a flight and she go gets a snack. She gets a bag of cookies and she goes to the lounge, right? So she's sitting in the lounge, she's on her phone, and next thing she knows, she hears the rustling of the bag of cookies, and the guy next to her, very nicely dressed, ties, another traveler, he's eating one of the cookies. She's like, oh my God, he's eating my cookies. So what she does, she goes over and she grabs a cookie and she eats it, hopefully sending him the message, right? Like, these are my cookies, stay away. So then she's doing some more stuff and she looks back, she hears it again and she's like, what the fuck? He's eating another cookie. And he's there, popping in his mouth and eats another one. And he goes and he takes the last one and he breaks it in half. He gives half to her and then he eats the other one and runs away. Right? So she's sitting there and her rage gets interrupted by the loudspeaker, right? There's a gate change. And she looks in her purse to get her boarding pass, and what is she surprised with? In her purse, an unopened bag of cookies, right? So the message there is when we're talking with other people, we have to put our assumptions aside and not always assume that we know what's going on, right? So people want to connect with you, and you have to think about really, so what stops you from connecting with them? Right, that's the part where our assumptions come into place. I want to put you see the phrase up on the slide.
Other than social anxiety, does it?
Right, so the best thing you can do is know your stuff, right? But don't necessarily assume that you know all this stuff. And that's the next point about connecting I want to mention here. In terms of waiting to talk, right? So we've done this. I want everyone here to learn how to listen and not just wait to talk. But the next part here I want to mention about connecting is knowing what you're talking about. All right? So it is actually important.
You do have the word actually.
I do have it on the slide, yeah. It is important to connecting. All right, so this is the last piece I'll make on this waiting to talk is, right? Think of the person who gets you at work. Right? There is someone at work who gets you, right? Chances are they know their stuff. You know your stuff. They know you know your stuff, you know they know their stuff, right? And if you've ever been in a meeting with this person, it's almost like you have your own secret language, right? Someone has a problem, and then the two of these people go back and forth. They're like, hey, that was like the thing, right? No, the other thing, right? And we did that, and it was good, right? And they're like, okay, yeah, okay, good, got it. And the meeting's over, most efficient meeting's over in 2 minutes. Of course, that meeting will go on for another 58 minutes. You've already solved the problem because you and this guy exchanged a look, and you knew exactly what to do. Right, so that's way more than experience. That's more than a coincidence. You are connected, right? And that speaks to how important it is to be connected with people. All right, so the third point I want to mention is to take action, right? To take the initiative. You'll notice that most of the idioms, the example, are going to require you to do something, right? And this is an important part about getting connected with people. So we want to get connected. We want to help communicate with people. To do that, you have to prepare. So I'm not telling people just to jump into random conversations. Do a little homework, take the initiative, stick out your hand to people, right? Being intentional can mean also wanting to take a risk, right? To get connected with people, remember you want to really teach them something, right? You really want to have a connection with this person. Sometimes you're going to have to expose yourself and you're going to have to say, I don't know. All right? I don't know are very powerful words, right? I could imagine that if someone here in this audience is listening, they're like, okay, they're going to go back to the office, they're going to sit in front of their computer next week, and they're going to look at it and just go, I don't know. And then your boss is going to come by and he's going to be mortified, right? He's going to see you there in front of your computer, you're going to be saying, I don't know, but they're not going to be mortified. That your boss is not going to be mortified because you're saying, I don't know, right? I mean, it's your boss, right? Chances are to get to that point, to be a success, you have to say, I don't know once in a while. He's going to be mortified because you're on chat roulette. And And you're going to be saying, I don't know, at your computer.
You did just say to expose yourself.
But it's okay. You can say,
way,
I was at a security conference, and they told me to get better at security, I have to expose myself and say, I don't know. So yeah, you have to be intentional. Sometimes means taking a risk. And the last thing, this is the easy one. The last part of communicating is to know your audience. Like I saved this one for the end because it's one of the more obvious. Who are they? What's their name? What do they care about? Like, figure out what these things are and bring them into your conversation. Like, knowing your audience matters for connecting. Like, even when giving presentations like this, right? Knowing your audience is a big deal, right? If your audience is a bunch of laid-back hackers, you can drop the F-bomb. If you're sitting in a room with people who are in suits, maybe you want to use more eloquent language.
I think we've got half and half, and you've already done it twice, but we're all right.
So just to summarize this before I hand it back to Amanda, right? Listen, know what you're talking about, be intentional, and know your audience, right? And the last piece to tie this all together, right, or connecting doesn't happen by accident. You're born with it, right? Some people just run fast. Other people actually know how to talk to other people, right? No. They practice. If a person is good at connecting and communicating, they've practiced. Right? If you're going to a party tonight, practice talking with people. Do it. Why would you practice doing that even though it's so uncomfortable? Because there are things that you know that you want someone else to know. And if you're ever going to do that and be good at it, it's going to take some practice. It's like what Mark Twain said. The difference between the almost right word and the right word is a very large matter. The difference between the lightning and the lightning bug.
So now it's time to go over some more specific examples. So I asked Twitter, Facebook, family, friends, when I got this idea, what were some of the phrases that they heard growing up? And it really blew my mind. Some of them were super funny, of the things like their mom would yell at them when they were growing up. And going back to having different types of communication based on geography, I could definitely tell that these people grew up in a different place than I ever did. And when researching these specific examples, we could kind of tell that there's a lot that are attributed to, like, Marilyn Monroe, Martin Luther King Jr., Benjamin Franklin, and a handful of others. And those were the ones to create all the sayings ever used, right? Like, anytime that you see a quote online, somehow Marilyn Monroe said it. I don't know how that works. But I'm pretty sure all of those are just a product of the internet generation. So this saying was the first one to give me the idea about the talk. I personally think this can be great advice to adhere to as long as you don't take it completely too literally. So I'll go into a little bit of the origin of this one. Originally, it was President Teddy Roosevelt's daughter, Alice. And she was like a socialite and had people over to her house all the time, like did interviews for paper and all that kind of stuff. And it was originally printed on a pillow, and it said, "If you can't say something good about someone, sit right here by me." Which is completely not what this means. It went from, "Here, come sit near me and we can gossip about these people," to, "You shouldn't really be gossiping about people." In the beginning, it's a really good saying to teach little kids, since we know they have way less of a filter than anybody else. Anybody that's a parent can think of the 5 million things your children have said in public to people that you've never wanted to come out of their mouth. But as adults, a lot of us have more ingrained knowledge about how that communication works. But there are a few caveats to this. The first caveat is that not everybody can pick up on social cues alone. Not only does our line of work bring in people that are very introverts, right? But it also brings in people that are different on the neurodiversity spectrum. So, you have high-functioning autism, you have all of these different things that make it difficult for others to speak to customers, to speak in boardrooms. knowing that ahead of time can really increase the way that, or increase the amount you talk to that person, because you can change how you go about it. Secondly, many of us are communicating in new and different ways all the time. Now it's 280 characters as opposed to 140. But you have this faceless person on the other end of the internet, and it really, really has drastically changed how we communicate with people. Our conversation skills have gone down. It's just that we're not used to putting a face to the name and putting emotions or an actual person to that handle or to that email address or whatever that's on the other end. And I can probably do an entire talk on internet bullying and all that kind of stuff, but that's also something that comes into play with communication. And while this saying is good advice to kind of keep in the back of your mind for many interactions, a lot of what we do involves hard truths, right? You can't always just be nice and kind and, tell somebody that their network's screwed, because those two things aren't going to mix. Let's see here. A major skill in almost all aspects of life is knowing how to say something negative, without, just really, really pissing off the other person. Tact is something that people don't always have, and that goes into our next point. We don't want to walk into a customer and tell them they've done a horrible job securing their network, or you do want to walk in and tell them that, but you're not going to. You want to come across as a less confrontational manner, and because if you come across as a dick, they're not going to listen to anything that you just said. They're going to take an offense. They're going to constantly working against you. If it's a security admin or if it's a sysadmin or whatever, like I run into this a lot, doing MSSP work and defensive consulting, is you say, all right, well, here's this list of things that you should probably do better. Even if you put it in a nice way, they're going to take offense to that because that's their baby, right? That's their network. That's all these, 80 hours a week that they've put into this. But you have people that do the same thing that want to say, I just tell it like it is, when they're not just telling it like it is. They're just being dicks about it. And there's a huge difference. You can tell it like it is without being brash and just generally mean and to the point. Where sometimes it's warranted, but other times it doesn't really work that well for you.
Okay. So, nothing ventured, nothing gained, right? So this is actually a very, very, very old phrase. We all know what it means, right? It means to take a risk, right? So nothing that we do is easy, right? We learn things, we build things, we create, we teach. Some pieces of it might be easier for some of us and a struggle for others. But for the most part, the things we do, the people in this room are doing, is really advanced stuff, right? The struggles for the stuff we do sometimes come with failures, and in those failures, we have learned a lot, right? No one enjoys leaving their comfort zone. But if you look back, every time you've gotten out of your comfort zone, you've learned something through that experience. Now, I'm not saying what you learn is always a positive thing. I'm not saying it didn't hurt, but it's learning nonetheless, right? I want to point out this here, that we have a very technical and extremely advanced slide, as you can see, right? This slide, all on its own, has a ton of meaning, right? So I just talked about venturing something and gaining something. We know that expression, we know what it means. I want to point to that area that we've so judiciously left between your comfort zone and where the magic happens. Right? So how do you get from your comfort zone to where the magic happens? I just said venture things. That's going to get you there. That's not exactly going to work. It's not the whole story. What's between those two are the people around you. Right? That's the help. When you venture something, you're also sending a message to the people that sit between those two circles. If you ask for help and show that you are venturing something and taking a risk, they will take you to where the magic happens.
My turn again. So who's ever gotten this from your parents? Right? So this quote actually belongs to Hall of Fame basketball player / coach John Wooden. It's a really good reminder that rushing through something might save you time right now, but is definitely not going to in the long run. For example, I think we could go on and on and on and on about the application of this in InfoSec and really anything in tech, right? Like, fuck it, do it in prod. This is only a testing environment. That's the basis of a lot of the hurry up and rush through something because we didn't think about the consequences or design anything as we were implementing it. Sometimes everything works out fine, right? Occasionally, last minute strokes of luck kind of just pull you out of the gutter when maybe it could have just, again, died a fiery death. But the point is, you can choose your actions. A lot of you know this. You're professionals. You design things. You think through very difficult and complex problems. But, getting the word out there that life is kind of about consequences when you're not actually thinking through the problems that you need to think through, is something that we definitely should have adhered to more, when our parents told that to us when we were younger. I know my life is full of my consequences. I have 3 children, so that's part of that. No, I'm joking. And as a subset of this, there's another phrase, if you can't do it right, don't do it at all. And that really should be at the heart of any design or purchasing decision. You're spending millions of dollars in capital. You want to make sure you do this stuff right, so in a year, 2 years, you don't have to re-implement and redesign everything because you didn't think everything through.
Okay, this is a quick one. Don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. All right,
That's me. That's me.
Who here is guilty of this? Right? You didn't finish the thing because the thing isn't finished. Right, see what I did there? Right. But in reality, too, we find ourselves working on things and working on things and working on things and not finishing things. Right? So when it comes to how we work with other people, this phrase teaches us that you don't always need to be perfect. I mean, we talked yesterday in at least one conversation about the list of things that organizations get wrong. And if that was a talk you gave a decade ago, you could probably still give the same talk about the things that are wrong. Wouldn't it be great if an organization got, say, somewhere between 20 or 80% of the way there with that list? Or even on one of those things, got that thing 80% right? Right? We would be ecstatic. So why do we keep letting the perfect get in the way of us getting stuff done? And here's a little secret for you. If you are willing to give away that last 20%, that's when this stuff starts getting fun. That's when we have time for the new technique, the open source tool our buddy told us about. Right? If we are willing to live this phrase, we will now be able to start doing the cool and interesting things.
Do you have time for this?
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So, pictures are worth 1,000 words. I'm going to skip over everything that's in the slide because we only have 13 minutes left. But I will give you a great picture about this. So everybody loves pie charts, right? We use pie charts in our daily lives. And this is what we're talking about. Idioms, proverbs, all that kind of stuff paint a picture. And so do pie charts. And you can use them they give you the power to invoke feelings and mental images to give people that would be way better than them reading a 15-page report. And like if you work in any kind of big data-esque role, right? So I don't want to call out any specific vendors. So log management. A lot of this helps get across pictures to senior executives as to what kind of value they're getting from the tools you're using and from the work that you're completing. That picture can say, look, we went from 3,000 incidents a month down to, 500 incidents a month. A picture's going to paint that more than you telling them specifically all of the incidents that you fixed.
We're gonna skip to. I really.
This works.
Can I do that?
Yeah. Go. Yeah, you can do this.
No. Can I just go to the sleeping slide?
I guess. Yeah.
All right.
We do only have 11
All right.
minutes
So,
left.
part of what we did in our research is we were looking through idioms and trying to look at things that have taught us lessons throughout the year.
I'm waiting for them to read the picture.
And we came across this book. Maybe we've read it, right? Everything I really needed to know, I learned in kindergarten. And it turns out a lot of those same lessons still apply in InfoSec. And if you wanted, you play the video, you can look at these slides, you could read this one and laugh. All right, but I wanted to really get to this one, even though we're running out of time, right? So the only reason I wanted to put this one in here is so you can point to a professional presentation that says, I should take a nap at work. And so here's what you do. You cue it up to right about what I'm about to say, then show that to your boss. You ready? Okay. So studies have shown that the more ready we are, the more naps we take at work, the more secure our networks are. So if we spend the time to charge our batteries, we'll be able to stop the APT. And now, and now when you go and you're doing, you're showing these things at work, you're taking a nap, now you can say you have a very good
I do
reason
need to ask, how many people have taken a nap over the last couple days?
Nap.
Come on,
Yeah,
honestly. You should take more naps.
The world needs more naps. And now at least you have, if you really wanted to do it, now you have an out. So,
So I can't emphasize this one enough. Yeah, we're all here, most of us, because this is a passion of ours. And I'm here because this is a passion of mine. And in this community that we're in, like a lot of us put in lots and lots and lots of hours, lots of traveling. But it's extremely, extremely important to have hobbies outside of sitting behind your computer and working on, threat research or whatever you might be doing. Anybody want to shout out like hobbies they have outside of tech? Podcasts. I don't know that counts, but because it's about tech. Gardening, blacksmith, very cool. I might have projects for you. I work on my house, until I had this tragic accident, I was re-siding my garage. So I try and, get out from behind the computer because it's extremely important to have balance in life. And that's one of the things that this book that we read, taught us, because it's very important to have that balance. Otherwise the quality of your work is going to go down super quick, eventually when you hit that brick wall.
Okay. This is the last thing, the lesson, the thing you'll understand when you're older, right? This is the last one in our slide. First off, play fair, right? Are there any hardcore cynics in the room? Put your hand down. Right? Life isn't fair, right? That's the contradiction to this one. Life isn't fair. Right? Is that a truism? Maybe that's a cliche. Going back to telling it like it is, playing fair is something that unfortunately we all need to learn. Right? And think of it this way, right? If you play fair, right, instead of being sneaky in your business practices, instead of doing things quietly and by yourself, right? With transparency, everything works better, right? It has a lot to do with the reputation you'll have for the people you're working with. Building a reputation takes a long time.
We all know those companies that have a bad reputation because of their sneaky business practices.
Right, they don't play fair. So even though this is something we learned in kindergarten, it still applies, and it'll make us better at what we do. Right? Without playing fair, you'll have to rely simply on reputation, which, as we know, takes a really long time. So we have a summary at the end, but before we wrap it up, this isn't a technical talk, but we still wanted to give people the opportunity to ask questions. What are some of the things you've heard, expressions or phrases that you find yourself saying all the time, that are these things that are passed down? Does anybody here have any questions or want to talk about some of their favorite expressions or phrases? What do you got? Dang it.
It gets a point across. It really does.
Yeah, we all have exclamations.
Yes.
Right? That we shout. And it's either going to send a message to everyone around us.
Mine usually just scares my cat.
He's going to send a message to everyone around us. Stay away for at least 5 more minutes. Anybody else have expressions or yeah? What do you got? Yes. The answer is yes. So the expression we hear all the time is life is unfair. But as our wise audience member points out, well, if it's unfair for me, it's unfair for you, it's unfair for everybody, and here we are back to the beginning. And that's fair. Yes. Anybody else? What do you got? Be honest.
As a cliche. As a cliche.
Oh, right.
Or as a...
Oh my gosh. If I have to hear someone else say, does that make sense? One more time. Just one more time. I'm going to flip the table.
And when you say to be honest, you're just making them think that everything else you've always said hasn't been honest. Oh, yeah.
Oh my gosh. So I think that falls in the cliche category for sure. Anybody else have their favorite phrases and expressions? You know. Oh my God, what a great way to make someone feel really good, right? Oh my gosh. Yeah, and like, if you no, I don't know. Why don't you tell me a lot more about it so I can actually understand what this means? That's a good one. Thank you. Yes, what do you got? Oh, I like it. So if
as a positive thing?
Yeah. Or just as a truism.
Okay.
It doesn't matter if it's positive or negative, it's going to happen. So he said beekeepers have a phrase that says just go tell the bees. Meaning that once you give it into the hive, it pollinates across the community. Yeah, something like that?
That's a nice bee pun.
Yeah, that's a good one. What else? Anybody else? I didn't see. There's a hand. IT winner.
Yeah.
Winner.
Yeah.
IT gold.
Just because you can doesn't mean you should. I have 3 boys. That's daily. Daily. I could use that. Well, we cross that bridge. Well, we'll cross that bridge when we get there.
I like it.
Yeah.
I mean, when you say that to someone, we'll cross that bridge when we get there, is one way of bringing the conversation back to the matter at hand. Right? So you have to, in a conversation with a person who is always going to find the thing wrong with it. Whatever it is you're working on. You know these people, right? They have a talent, which is important in some cases, to pick apart all the things we're working on now, and some of them will be very far-fetched, probably true, and using a phrase like that is a nice way to bring them back and say, hey, let's solve this problem right here. Let's put out this fire. This dumpster fire is not going to put itself out, whatever. Then we'll worry about
it. Probably helps with scope creep.
Nice. What else? Oh, we got 2. All right, dang it. What do you got? Goes around, comes around. Everyone else here know that phrase? Yeah. Speaks for itself. Sorry, go ahead. Mike. Oh yeah, bridge. Crossing the bridge when you get there.
Ooh. What part of requirement do you not understand?
Oh. All right, so when you use it, what does that mean? What's going on in the other person's head when that phrase comes out of your mouth? We have a lot of power. I mean, I guess to just start wrapping up the questions, right? We're running out of time. I like that one too. We have a lot of power in the things we say. And part of what we're learning here, besides just, listening to people, is understand that these things have meaning. Take what you know about how they make you feel and think about that when you're using it with other people. I like that people were willing to share. Thank you.
Okay, so that was great for questions. We can wrap this up a little bit. These are all message for hackers, for all of us, and none of what we covered is new. right? Hopefully it was at least somewhat entertaining. And we've been doing all of this communication, this language, mentoring, all this kind of stuff for a long time. And this talk now, more than ever, I think is important because we're seeing an influx of new people. People are coming in, they don't know a lot of the phrases that we use, they don't know why we use them. You know, just like what part of requirements don't you understand? The new people coming in might not realize what the consequences are of either, of like breaking, those requirements, right? Or scope creep or whatever you want to talk about. So you want to look around and help those people bridge that gap in between where the magic happens and where your safe space is. But you can do things like find people that love to hack, find people that love to hack the things that you like to hack. And there are people, that love to make the system work the way that they need it to work. You know, if they're staying up working from 10 till 4 a.m. after the children have gone to sleep and working on this specific niche thing, those are the people that, you know, you want to find and work with and kind of mentor because, you know.
Teach them the things you'll understand when you're older.
Right. Oh my God. We kind of tied that up, didn't we? All right.
So that, I mean, Amanda was saying it, there's a lot of reasons for it, but we want to seek out the hackers and we want to bring them in. Right? Has anybody here actually heard the expression before, skills gap? Right? So we've all heard that before, right? Yeah. So I want to say fuck that. Right? I want to say there are people around you already that are hungry. Right? You bet your ass we're all alike. Right? We were spoon-fed baby food at school when we hungered for steak. Right? The bits that you let slip through the cracks were chewed up and tasteless. We've been dominated by sadists, ignored by the apathetic. And the few that wanted to teach us something found us willing pupils. But those were few, like drops of water in the desert, right? This is
poetic.
This is our world now. Right? So that's my way of reminding you that hackers and people have been teaching each other for a long time.
Does anybody know what that quote was that he just said? Because I didn't know it until he wrote it down, so I get to cheat. But does anybody else know what
recognize
that's from?
That? No. All right. You can look that up. There was a publication a long time ago called the Hacker Manifesto. And it's very relevant today in the fact that the people around us are hungry, just like we were. And if we teach them the things that we knew when we were older, we'll help bring them in. And that's what we need to do, right? Let me just end it here. Go look for them, right? We can find them. We have the tools. We have the expressions. We speak the same language. That's it. Thank you.
And that's us. Yeah. And our contact info. So thank you so much.